for each bill as they come forward and they come up today and tomorrow. I would like to thank Chairwoman Waters for working with the Republican side of the aisle to make changes to the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Rewards Act. As I said early on to you, Chairwoman Waters, committee Republicans stand ready to work with you when you reach across the aisle, and I stand ready to work with you when you reach across the aisle. I believe the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Rewards Act is a good example of this, and unfortunately for this markup, a rare example of bipartisan cooperation and trying to seek commonality for goals that we see similarly. Together, we crafted the strongest bill possible on kleptocracy, and I and my colleagues look forward to supporting it. Beyond this, I'm concerned with the rest of the markup agenda. I'm particularly concerned about the partisan message the remaining bills send to our constituents, consumers, and public at large. I don't want our constituents to think that this is just Congress at work as usual, partisan vote after partisan vote, but unfortunately, we see a lot of that. Take, for example, H.R. 1815, the SEC Disclosure Effectiveness Testing Act. Sounds good. Did you know the SEC already conducts investor testing on regulations which they bring forward? Did you know the SEC worked with the RAND Corporation to conduct both in-person interviews as well as a nationwide survey on the form CRS, as a result of which I'm holding their very report today. If the SEC is already doing what you want, what is it you really want to accomplish with this bill? A different outcome on a regulation? A different regulation entirely? Is your goal just to stop the SEC from promulgating rules? Or take, for example, H.R. 1500, the Consumer First Act. I know of the animus that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle hold towards former Director Mick Mulvaney. We all know him well as a former member of the House, but I know your view of him and the actions he took as director of the CFPB. But will codifying your agenda, bringing accountability and transparency to the CFPB operations, actually achieve what you want? If you really want to make the agency accountable to the American people, let's start with the fundamentals. Change the CFPB's organizational structure, its fundamental mechanisms, create an Office of Inspector General. There are fundamental reforms we can have for this agency so it can endure and last, all of which would bring greater transparency and accountability. Instead, we have Republicans having a different view of this tinkering with this agency that was created in Dodd-Frank. As I said a minute ago, Republicans stand ready to work with you in these areas. I want to move forward on policies that benefit all Americans. In fact, there's not one person on this committee who does not want to end homelessness. But authorizing $13 billion in new mandatory spending over 5 years actually won't end homelessness. It feeds a broken system that will not yield results. In fact, one of our witnesses testified that more federal money is not the solution. We need to make sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable populations. We need to ensure that we're working with state and local governments to remove barriers to affordable housing. These are the things we should be legislating on to help end homelessness. I'm saying to you, let's work together on these policies. Not one conversation was had on achieving a bipartisan result on ending homelessness. That is a missed opportunity. Finally, a few words on H.R. 1595. Madam Chairwoman, I wrote to you and Subcommittee Chair Meeks asking for a delay of this measure. Some of my side support the measure as written. Many oppose it. Most importantly for this committee, we need to ensure that we're doing our due diligence before proceeding. One committee hearing is not enough to fully understand the consequences of this bill. It is a massive change in federal policy. I would once again encourage you to delay consideration of this measure until the most fundamental questions have been answered, reviewed, and addressed. One brief legislative hearing is not enough for a massive undertaking that this committee seeks to do with just one bill in the markup. I yield back.